Okay, this first chapter in the PMP workbook is about the introduction, and this includes introduction about projects, program, portfolio, their attributes, and the organizational structures, the project life cycle, the project management processes, project groups, process groups, the project phases, and the environment in which the project works, the PMO, and a few other topics we will cover in this section. So first of all, the projects. Projects are undertaken at all levels of in the organization, and they have some specific attributes that distinguish them from the organizational operations. First of the first unique attribute of projects is that it creates a unique product or service or result. Projects enable organizations to achieve a different state which has a higher value for the organization, and it's a different. So project is actually a change process which brings about a different state. The organization was organization, or the project can be outside the organization as well. So it takes the organization or the environment from one state to another, where the first state has a lesser value and the subsequent state has a higher value with respect to the organization, or with respect to the community, with respect to any other objective with which the project was initiated. So this is the first attribute that creates a unique service, product or result. The projects are, as opposed to operations which are ongoing, projects are temporary. They have a specific start and a specific end. Project must start at some time, which is authorized through a project charter issued by a project sponsor, who issues and announces the start of a project, and the project must end based on a certain criteria, and that criteria actually ensures that the objective with which the project was initiated has been achieved, and now the project's purpose is complete. The project closes, and all its resources are released. The budgetary resources are consumed, and whatever is left behind is released to the performing organization, and the project team is either assigned to a new project, or it goes back to the performing organization, and they continue to sustain the outcome of the project through organizational operations. So the second attribute is that the projects are temporary. The third, as I indicated in the first attribute, that projects bring about a change. Projects take an organization or a community or any other group from one state to another to achieve an objective. The projects create business value, or simply you can say that projects create value. If it's a for business project, then it creates a business value, or if it is not a business project, it can be a community service project or a non-profit project. So it actually creates an objective, creates an outcome that delivers an objective with which the project was initiated and executed. So that is the fourth attribute of the project. The fifth attribute is that projects can be the context in which projects are executed. The projects can be internal projects within the organization, or they can be external projects, or they can be there can be many possibilities within an organization. For example, there is a possibility that a project is executed within a department of an organization, or a project internal to the organization is executed across multiple departments in that organization. People from different departments join together and they execute a project to achieve some objective for the organization. So this is internal to the organization. The projects can be external. The performing organization releases some of its resources for the project. They go to the project, execute the project, deliver the outcome, and they come back to the organization. And they are delivering that project to some other organization. There can be possibilities that separate independent organizations come together as inside the organization, different departments were executing a project. The same way, there can be independent organizations coming together to execute a project and delivering the project to some of their mutual client or a community. And when the project is complete, the resources go back to their respective organizations. So there can be different contexts in which projects are executed. At a higher level, although PMBOK guide is related to project management only, and it does not elaborate much about program management and portfolio management, but it does explain to some extent the program and the portfolio management, to the extent up to which the program and project management areas intersect with the project management domain. So from the project management professional perspective, the aspirants should know what is the difference between project management, program and portfolio management, and operations. So at the top level, projects are independent endeavors with all the attributes that I have just explained. And if there are different projects that are interrelated, and they want to deliver, all those projects are initiated to deliver a higher level objective, then those projects can be managed under a program. I will give an example of all three: the project, program and portfolio, which you will be able to distinguish between the three. And if there are different programs and they are working being executed under one organization or portfolio, then there can be multiple programs under a portfolio, and there can be projects which are directly managed under a portfolio. And one important thing to note here is that projects are unique, temporary endeavors. Program again are unique, they are temporary, and while portfolio includes the operations of an organization as well. So they are not just the projects and programs; they include the operations as well. So this is the big difference between the portfolio and the program and projects. So let's take an example. For example, if there is a community where there is a large number of, let's say, a large number of people who are homeless or who do not own a home, they are living on rent, and an organization, a housing services organization has a portfolio to build houses. Then under that portfolio they can create different programs. For example, there can be multiple programs. The objective will be, the portfolio level objective will be to reduce the number of homeless people in a specified geographical location in a community, and under that program there can be multiple under that portfolio there can be multiple programs. One can be that building houses for people who have let's say 150,000 salary range, and another set of houses built for people who have a higher salary range, for example 250 or 500,000 and so on. So there can be multiple programs under a portfolio, and under each program there will be different projects going on. There can be one single project, or there can be multiple projects, and there can be interaction between the projects as well, between the programs as well, because they are executed under the, it's not rigid that program will be completely independent and there will be no interaction among the programs, because it's working under the same portfolio. So there can be interactions between the program, and under a program there can be interactions between the projects. So under one housing project there can be a project which is related to the civil construction. There can be another project which is related to the roads construction, etc. So this is the difference. The project will be building a house. Program will be to create different category houses. One is for 150,000 salary range, 500,000 salary range, 100,000 salary range, etc. These are the programs, and all this of course will require some internal operational activity, and that all the programs and the operations will be managed by the portfolio, under the portfolio. So this is the difference between the three. Next is the important thing to note is that the project goes through a life cycle. There can be different life cycles, as you might be knowing that up to PMP 5 main emphasis, PMP 5th edition main emphasis was on the waterfall project management technique, but in the 6th edition there is a large emphasis on the agile and adaptive approach of project management. So the life cycles of project management can be predictive, which is the waterfall, and where much of the planning is done upfront. There is considerable amount of elaboration available for the scope of the project that is at hand. But in actual practice, there are projects, and there are lot of large number of projects are there where there can be some portion of the project that is elaborated, well elaborated, but there can be on the same project a portion which is not for which you do not have much information. They are not elaborated very nicely. So in that case, that portion of the project can be executed through an adaptive approach, which means that as soon as you have more information, you will adapt an agile approach where you require a very frequent interaction with the client or the customer or the end user, so that you can have feedbacks, since the scope is not elaborated very nicely. So you can have frequent feedback, so the project defects and reworks can be reduced to a minimum, and you can get very frequent and quick project elaborations, scope elaborations. There are times when even the customer, the client is not very sure about every part of the project that they want delivered. So that is in the agile or adaptive approach, that is well absorbed by the performing organization, and they take it as something that comes naturally in project management environment, and that adaptive nature is taken care into the type of life cycle type of methodology used to execute a project. So there can be projects where the whole project is executed based on the predictive approach. For example, a small house. In our previous example that I just presented for the difference between project, program, and portfolio, in order to build a small house that has been built by the organization for maybe for hundreds of those designs have already been built, so there may not be a requirement to use a adaptive approach for that. There may not be a frequent feedback required in that case, but if there is a new design, if there are very different, unique and requirements from the community, from the end customer, then more frequent feedback and adaptive approach may be required. So there can be projects where there is complete predictive approach, or there can be projects where the whole project is executed based on an adaptive or agile approach, and there can be projects where some part of the project is executed based on the predictive approach, where upfront planning is possible, and the project and that part of the project is well elaborated. But there can be other part of the project where the scope elaboration is not very well is not available, and that part of the project will be required to be executed through the agile approach. And under the agile approach, there can be different approaches where agile, one of the most popular agile methodology is Scrum, where the whole project is divided into which is called a project backlog, where all the customers' requirements are listed in the form of a project backlog, and from the project backlog, some portion of the items that are required to be delivered are taken, and a sprint is done. A sprint is a 4 to 6 weeks execution activity which is done by the project team, and it's not most of the time it's not it does not go beyond 6 weeks, so that frequent interaction with the customer may be possible. After 6 weeks of execution, based on the project backlog, the 6 weeks sprint, which will take a subset of that project backlog called the sprint backlog. That sprint backlog is delivered by the team, and after the sprint is complete, there will be a presentation to the client, to the customer, and their feedback is taken. Either it is accepted, or if there are any changes or more iterations are required to deliver the final product, then the iterations are done. So there are now not just the waterfall technique, which is sequential, where most of the planning is done upfront. As opposed to that, there is an approach which is called agile. And in agile, there is not much elaboration of the project scope at the start of the project. In that case, whatever information is required, the project is started with that much information, and the execution is done in chunks. Some portion of the scope is executed, then it's presented to the customer, and the customer's feedback is taken for any modifications, iterations, or acceptance or rejection decisions. So this was quickly about the project's life cycle, and there are two terms that I use in the PMBOK. One is project phases, and the other is the project process, the process groups. project phases is a very different concept, and project process groups is completely different. The main difference is that there can be multiple process groups that may be applicable in all or some of the project phases. Now, what are the project phases? The project phases can be the conceptualization of a project, the initiation of the project, the feasibility assessment, the designing of the project, the prototype of the project, the execution of the project, delivery of the project, and then the closing of the project is, or you could say, the release of the deliverables. These are different phases of the projects. They are sequential, of course, and they will require a phase gate. There are different names used for phase gate or kill point or decision point, and there are different names for it. So when one phase is completed, there is a decision to close that phase and enter the next phase. And as opposed to this concept of phases, there is another term which is called process groups, and the process groups are 5. In the PMBOK 6, 5 process groups are defined. One is initiating, and this of course does not mean the initiation of a project. This is the processes in this project, in this process group of one which is develop project charter, which is of course related to the initiation of a project, the initial phase of the project, but identification of stakeholders, which is also included in the initiating process group. Identification of stakeholders is a continuous process. It will happen throughout the project execution, project life cycle. So one thing to keep in mind is that process groups are not project phases. So first process group is initiating. The second process group is planning, which includes all those processes defined in the PMBOK. Total 49 processes are defined. All those processes that fall in the planning process group, and this planning can be in the project phase of prototyping, or in the project phase of conceptualization, or in the project phase of feasibility study, or they can fall in the project phase of design or execution, delivery, and they can fall anywhere. So this is I'm trying to emphasize the fact that process groups are not phases. So the second process group is planning process group. The third is executing processes that fall under the executing process group. Then monitoring process group, and you can understand that monitoring is not a phase of a project. Monitoring is throughout when the project starts till the end. The monitoring and controlling continues. So the processes that a project manager executes or initiate in order to monitor the performance and to control the performance of his project fall under the monitoring and controlling process group. Then there are processes which fall under the closing process, which include this process group. The one process that falls in the closing process group is named as close project or phase, and this phase, the word phase is included because this process group is not related only to the closing phase of the project. So it is also included with it also relates to the closing of a phase. So there are 5 process groups: initiating, planning, executing, monitoring and controlling, and closing. So these are the PMBOK guide, within these 5 process groups there are total 49 processes, and these processes as they are sorted into 5 process groups, they are also sorted in 10 knowledge areas. The first knowledge area is integration, which means that all the project artifacts, all the project's activities, the processes should be done in an integrated manner, and that is the responsibility of the project manager to integrate everything into smooth and streamlined effort to deliver the project's results, the project service or result, whatever is required to be delivered by the project, and to successfully generate the outcome for which the project was initiated. So that is integration, and then there comes scope, knowledge area, and then schedule, then cost, quality, resources, risk, procurement, stakeholders. There are the communication. There are 10 knowledge areas. So every knowledge area, so there are two. If you go to, it's probably on the page 26 or 25 of the PMP guide. If you open that, let me tell you, it's on page 25 on the PMP guide. If you open page 25 of your PMP guide, you will see a matrix where you have columns, 5 columns for the 5 process groups, and you have 10 rows for the 10 knowledge areas. There you can see the complete sorting of 49 processes, which process goes in which process group and which knowledge area. So these are the knowledge areas which are 10 in number. The project, then the next thing I want to discuss here is the tailoring. I have talked about tailoring to some extent in my previous talk as well. Tailoring would mean that since the PMP guide is a presentation of a body of knowledge within the project management domain, so it contains a lot of information, and there are possibilities that in some projects, some of the processes, some of the inputs, tools and techniques or outputs may not be relevant to that project. So the project manager is the best judge to see which of the processes, which knowledge, which ITTOs are relevant to his project, and he will be using those artifacts in his project. That is called tailoring. Project manager will do the tailoring and will decide what is best suited for his project. The next topic is the project environment under which a project is executed. It has two aspects. The project has an internal environment and an external environment. So the project's internal environment is usually defined by OPAs. I call OPAs the organizational process assets. The organizational process assets will include the organizational policies, the different documents, lessons learned, or different procedures. All these, the PMO guidelines, all these documents, all this internal stuff is organizational process assets, and this is the environment actually under which the project manager has to work. Although the project manager has the flexibility to use some of the organizational process assets if he thinks that they are helpful for the project execution, and he has some amount of flexibility to select or not select some of the organizational process assets. But there can be some organizational process assets that the project manager may not have any option to leave. For example, if there is a policy for the compensation of the project staff, then of course project manager will probably have no authority to bypass that policy. That will be a mandatory organizational process asset for him. But as a whole, the organizational process assets, for the OPAs, the project manager has an amount of flexibility whether to use it for his project or not. based on the fact that whether the OPAs are helpful for the project execution or are not or may not be relevant for him. The other factor for the environment that the project is executed is the environmental process, enterprise environmental factors. The enterprise that is executing the project, its environment. These are the external factors, and most of the times the project manager has no authority over these EVs, the environmental enterprise environmental factors. So, as a thumb rule, OPAs are those environmental factors where project manager has some flexibility. There is a flexibility to use or leave. But EVs are environmental factors where the project manager has least or no authority to alter them, or for example, if government, they include the government regulations, the government policies, taxes, customs, regulations, etc. All these types of things are they fall under the enterprise environmental factors, and the project manager or the enterprise has no authority over these factors. The next, quickly I will go through that. Next thing is the organizational structures. Organizational structure is also an environment under which the project is executed, and usually the project manager has no authority to alter the organizational structure. The project manager has to take the organizational structure as a given, and he will be executing his project with the same environment. So there are different organizational structures. The classical organizational structure is usually a functional organizational structure where there is a general manager or an executive director at the top, and then there are different functional departments or divisions, engineering division and the designing, and there can be different divisions: finance, accounting, engineering, manufacturing, etc. So these are the functional, and each function has a head or a manager. So there, the classical or the traditional organization has a top general manager and then functional heads who are called functional managers. So in such organizations, the project managers, when a project is initiated, some of the team members are taken from different departments who are assigned as a project manager from among them. So these project managers are actually reporting to two bosses, and because of the organizational structure, the strong reporting channel is with the functional manager, and in such organization the project manager has little or almost no authority, and he works most of the time as an expediter or coordinator in a traditional functional organization. The other extreme, you can say that there is an organization structure where you have different product hierarchies, and under each product or project hierarchy there is a different project manager. That product manager is also working as a project manager, so it has complete authority, and that project manager is reporting at a higher level. So they are independent from other project managers or other product managers, and they have an independent team with them. So in such a case, project manager has full authority. He is able to control the project budget, control the project's staff, and there is only one reporting channel, and the staff team, the project team, is reporting to the project manager directly. So in this organization, project manager has almost complete authority, and there is much better execution of the project, and there are various project management related advantages in such organization. there are some modifications which are that modification is the matrix organization. In a matrix organization, if you can visualize that matrix organization will be that if you can visualize that there can be different columns where you have the functional departments, and then there are rows, and at the same level where the functional managers are, there is a manager of project managers. In the rows there can be, for example, if there are 3 functional managers for department 1, 2 and 3, there are 3 project managers which are rows, and there is a functional manager level manager of project managers, and that manager of project managers is at the same level as the functional manager, so he has the same authority. So there will be a better coordination, better level of authority for the project manager. So this is a matrix structure. Now if in this matrix structure there is a tilt towards the project manager for more authority, more control over the budget, that is called a strong matrix. But if the project manager has lesser authority and not much control over the budget, then it is called a weak matrix. And if there is a balance, it is called a balanced matrix. So these are the different organizational structures under which and that is also an environmental factor under which the projects are executed, and the project manager has to execute his project within those organizational structures. And usually the project manager has no liberty to create his own organizational structure outside of the organization. He has to work under same, so the organizational structure is usually a given for a project manager, and that the project manager has almost no authority to alter the organizational structure. So this was a quick introduction about some initial concepts, and in my next talk I will be presenting I will be starting the knowledge areas. Next talk will be about the project integration management, the first knowledge area, and then subsequently we will be discussing all the knowledge areas, all the 10 knowledge areas. So until then, thank you for listening. I will be presenting the integration management very soon. Thank you for listening. Allah Hafiz.